Yes, welcome back to Home Studio Q&A for yet another week here on Studio Live today. My name is Pete and this is where I help you create, record and release your best music through your own questions. So if you've got a question and you're here live on YouTube or Facebook, please put question in front of your comment and drop that down in the chat. Watching on the replay, listening on the podcast, no problem. Leave your comments down below if you're watching on the replay on YouTube or Facebook. And if you're listening to the podcast, head over to studiolivetoday.com to find all the ways you can get in touch. Now, we are going to jump into your questions, but as usual, we have a bit of a feature topic. And this week, I want to talk about mastering because this is a question that I get asked about an awful lot. What the heck is mastering and why should I care? So that's what we're going to answer here now. So, what is mastering and why should you care about it? How does it affect you and your home recording? Well, it breaks down like this. There's three things we're going to cover here. I'm going to give you the elevator pitch around what mastering is actually all about, and then we're going to go into a little bit of the history of mastering, and then the important stuff, some quick tips that are going to help you take your final mix and turn it into an epic final master. So, what is mastering? Well, mastering is adding those final touches to your final stereo mix to make it competitive and comparable with other songs. It's what we call radio ready, even though very few people listen to the radio anymore. But imagine that your song is in a playlist. There's a Foo Fighters tune, and then there's your song, and then there's a Drake tune. And you want to make sure that your song doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. If you've got a final mixed version and you haven't done some of the things we're going to talk about in a moment, it may be that theirs is coming along at this volume, yours just sounds dead and lifeless and too quiet, and then the next track kicks in. So the main purpose of mastering is to make sure that when you are releasing your music, that it is the best it can possibly be. Now, it can include things like EQ, stereo widening, multi-band compression, but primarily limiting or brick wall or peak limiting is what you're going to do the most of when it comes to mastering. And we'll talk about what that is in a moment. Now, the key goal of mastering is really to lift the overall output volume up to 0 dB. So if your volume is lower than that, lower than the maximum volume, the first thing you'll do is kind of normalize that volume up to 0 dB, and then you're going to actually limit it so you're pulling up some of those quieter parts to make the overall sound. Now, you can go too far with this. We don't want to completely remove all the dynamic range from our mix or our master. We'll talk about that in a moment. But let's talk about the history, because I like learning where things came from. The history of mastering. You've probably heard of a master tape. So in the past, what would happen is that you would mix and then you would need to create a master. So the mix engineer would have all the mix there ready on the console. They'd run a master tape. They'd record down a master version. And that is what they would use to press their records and cassettes and eventually CDs could all be produced from that one master. Now, you're probably familiar with the term remaster. That's where the original mix is then mastered again using maybe some newer technology, some different plugins. And remixing is different, although like most things in recording, the two terms are kind of interchanged sometimes these days. But technically a remaster is still using the exact same tracks, the exact same mix, but just adding some different mastering plugins. So how does that translate to the digital world? Why do we need a master now? Well, technically we don't. We obviously don't need a master tape, but we do need a master file, a final stereo wave file, which is the file that we're going to then distribute, that you're going to upload to SoundCloud or distribute to Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, using your YouTube videos. You want the highest quality master file that you can actually have. But it doesn't need to be a tape, it just needs to be a file. Now, there are some people that don't even master, and we'll talk about that in a moment and why that is the case. So, do you need to master these days? Well, the short answer is no, because a lot of your digital audio workstations will actually have a master track or a master bus, a master fader that you can add mastering plugins to. So here's what you do. You get your final mix together, and then you're like, yep, there's my final mix. You leave a little bit of headroom. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then you master that track simply by adding mastering plugins to the master bus. So really, you don't need to. Now, I prefer having my mastering, my final mix, exported as a stereo wave file and then imported back in so that I can add it just to that stereo wave file. The reason being is that when you've got your entire mix there, the temptation is to go back and start changing individual tracks. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's the mixing process. I like to have a complete end to mixing and then just do mastering. Otherwise, it tends to never end. So when you got your final mix, if you're doing your mastering and you're finding that you're needing to adjust a whole lot of stuff, maybe you need to go back to that final mix and do some more tweaking before you actually master. Let's talk about the practical side of this. As I mentioned, all I do is export my stereo file from my DAW, from GarageBand, from Reaper, from Pro Tools, from wherever you're recording. And then you can either do two things. You can use some software, some specialized mastering software, or you can simply use the digital audio workstation you're already using. If you're using GarageBand if you're using GarageBand or any other DAW, just bring it back in as a stereo track. And then all you're doing is adding those plugins to that stereo track, that one track, instead of having to add it to all the different individual components. So that is how you can actually master, is just bring it in, add your limiter, add your EQ, add your other plugins, and do those things. Now, as I mentioned here, there are other things you can do. Limiter, often called a peak limiter or a brick wall limiter. What that'll do is raise up the audio, but it will limit it, hence the name, at 0 dB. That's to stop it from going over and clipping or peaking or distorting your signal. So that is the main thing that you're doing with a master, is to make sure it's competitive at a competitive volume. There's a couple of things you can do wrong. You can obviously underlimit, which is what I was talking about before. Your mix won't be competitive. It won't sound good because it won't be at a loudness level that is going to be competitive with others. You can go too far the other way. You can overlimit, overcompress, and you would have heard this sound. It starts pumping. You start getting that pumping sound, or you start still getting some distortion, because the brick wall limiter can only do so much. It's like, I cannot do no more, Captain. All those sort of things. It can only do so much with that. So other plugins that you can add in there, like I said, if you want to tweak the EQ, tweak the EQ. If you want to use other fancy harmonizer or saturation plugins, use some trial and error. Have some fun with this. But remember, all of the moves in mastering should be little tiny tweaks, similar to the old adage that if you've got a bad recording, you can't fix it in the mix. You can't take a crappy recording and suddenly it's epic because of all the mixing voodoo that you do. It's the same with a master. Don't take your final mix and then expect that if it's terrible, you can just master your way out of it. Fix it in the mix and then come into the master. So I'm going to end with this, and this is something that Ian Shepherd, great mastering engineer, says a lot about mastering, and that is do no harm. So the final point on mastering is you should be really conscious to not actually harm your final mix. So whatever you do in mastering, it should be to enhance the good work you've already done. It shouldn't be to reinvent the wheel and do brand new things to completely change the song. If you've recorded it well, if you've mixed it well, your mastering should be a simple, straightforward process that is simply enhancing all of the good work that you've already done. There you go. That is mastering in a nutshell. I hope that gave you a few pointers, a few ideas. Like everything in music, there is no one way to do this. That's my opinion. That's my view. That's how I approach it. You may have a completely different way. I'd love to hear from you. Drop those down in the comments or in the chat here if you have your own views. Thank you to everyone who is here live. Once again, if you do have any questions, please throw them in the chat here. And if you're watching on the replay, throw them in the comments. We're going to jump in and answer some of the questions that have come in through the week. And then we will jump into the live chat if there's any other questions that we have here. Let's jump on over. We'll bring up the questions on my screen. These are questions, all the questions this week have actually come from YouTube comments. You can leave a comment, leave a question in the comments, and your comment may be featured as one of my questions here. So this one is from Sagato Singh. It's about connecting audio interfaces. So my question is, can I use the same way for an Android device? I'm getting more questions about Android in the last few weeks. So if you're new to the channel, I do actually specialize in iOS, so iPads and iPhones, and a little bit of PC. Android is a bit of a mystery to me. So I thought I would throw this out there so that I can actually ask the wider Studio Live Today community to see if anyone has experience with this. My understanding, my basic understanding is that with Android, you can use an OTG cable and connect that up. So just a mini USB, micro USB or USB-C to USB adapter, and then plug it in. You do have the same sort of similar problems you have with power. So you may need a powered USB hub to enable enough power to get to your interface, because your phone or your tablet may not power it up. But if anyone else, either watching live or on the replay, has any other advice around using Android devices and audio interfaces or USB microphones, please drop those in the comments here. Let us know if there's anything that you can contribute to that. Let's move on here. Talking about interfaces, I have a video about connecting a USB audio interface to an iPhone or iPad. The question here is, hello, can I use an XLR microphone through the audio interface? So yes, you can. Pretty much every audio interface. There's basically three different kinds of ways to do this. There's your audio interface that's got just a microphone, so just a preamp. So yes, you can plug your XLR into that. So there's ones that are specifically just for microphones. There's ones that are specifically just for guitar, in which case you can't plug in a microphone. So it doesn't have a preamp, which means it's only going to accept a instrument level signal, which means you need to plug in via a 1/4-inch adapter, not an XLR. And then there are things like, yes, you knew I couldn't last more than 10 seconds without talking about the Steinberg UR22C. This is the interface that I use, Focusrite Scarlett, Behringer Euphoria. There's a heap of different ones you can pick up. This just happens to be my favorite. And yes, you can connect up any USB or 1/4-inch, whether it's line level or instrument level. So this gives you the ultimate flexibility. Now, if you're talking USB, I've got a feeling perhaps you're asking about USB here. No, USB microphones cannot be connected to audio interfaces because a USB microphone actually creates its own audio interface. Believe it or not, a USB mic has an audio interface built in. It does all the input and output. That's why your USB mics will have a headphone jack and a volume control, as well as an input gain control on the more high level ones, because they basically become their own single channel audio interface. They manage all the inputs and outputs. So it means that if you have an a USB microphone, unfortunately you can't use it with your audio interfaces and plug them in via XLR, except there are a few that break that rule that are actually dual. They're actually USSR, going back in time, that are USB and XLR. So if you do want the ultimate flexibility, I think some of the higher end Blue Yetis, I think the AT2100 USB, some of those might actually be dual USB and XLR. If you are in the market for gear, head on over to the website, studiolivetoday.com/gear. Has all of my recommendations, all of which work with your iPhone or iPad, because that's what I primarily use. Let's move on to our next question here. This one comes from Jessica Jan. It says, hi, Pete. Excuse me. Are you streaming your iPad screen? How can you stream your camera and iPad screen at once? So there's a few ways to go about this. I'm actually streaming my iPhone screen right now. So I'm using an app called Reflector 3, which is on my PC here. You simply load that up. It then creates its own AirPlay server, and then you can AirPlay from any iOS device directly to your PC and then pop it up on your screen. So that is simply over there on my screen, and then I'm screen sharing using StreamYard, which is the streaming platform that I use here. So there's different ways to do it. There's another app called Switcher. So you can use Switcher Studio to actually directly stream from your iPhone or iPad. The problem is, and I'm facing this right now, is that you can't export or output via HDMI because HDCP, which is the copy protection that's part of HDMI, is on all iOS output devices, which means even though I plug it in to my HDMI capture card, try to throw it on the screen, it says, no, you are trying to do something dodgy, Mr. Pete. We can't let you do that. So hopefully I'll find a way around that, because I don't want to record my Netflix or my Disney Plus. I just want to show my GarageBand screen so I can do tutorials and help you create music. Anyway, we'll continue on. Hopefully that helped you out there, Jessica. A long one here from John, and then we'll jump over to the folks live and see what questions we have. John says, does anyone know a way to specify the mic input source and still use headphones to monitor? I don't have an interface. I just have a regular Apple EarPods and want to be able to use both the headphone mic as well as my iPhone's internal mic for tracking while still having the ability to monitor. If I plug headphones into monitor, then the mic input automatically defaults to the headphone mic. So my experience with this, and again, I'll throw it out there to the community to see if anyone else has different experience, is that as soon as you plug something in to your iPhone or iPad, that becomes the default, and there's no sort of selection. Unlike your PC or your Mac where you can say, use this for input and this for output, as soon as you plug something in, it overrides your audio settings. Now, I'd love for someone to tell me, Pete, you're crazy. There's a simple option. All you need to do is this. If that's the case, please let me know. But in my experience, there's no way to, for instance, plug in a headset microphone. So your earpods or your AirPods, as soon as they're plugged in, they become both the input and the output. You can't then say, actually, use my onboard mic for the audio and then output here, or use the onboard audio output and accept the input via my mic. I'm pretty sure and it's the same with an audio interface. What a lot of people get trapped into, especially using older iPhones, is they plug in an audio interface and then they plug their headphones into the iPad headphone jack. You can't do that. It's all then going to come out of the headphone jack of your audio interface, because this replaces not only the input but the output from your device. So, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but again, in my experience, it's not possible. Again, if someone has any ideas, that's why I do these shows, so that we can share the information. I'm one dude that knows one set of stuff. The community here knows a lot more collectively than I do, and that's why it's great to have these shows. Let's jump over, see what questions we have over here on the live chat. We have a question here from Fallen, who has this question: how do I upload my music onto stuff like Apple Music? So, to upload your music to Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, all the other places, you need a distributor. So there's no way to directly upload straight into all of these platforms. You do need to go through a third party called a distributor. The distributor I use is called DistroKid. If you've been on the channel before, you've probably heard me talk about them. If you want to learn more, you can search my name, Pete Johns, and DistroKid. Got a heap of videos showing you exactly how to do that. And I do have a VIP link. So if you go to studiolivetoday.com/distro, DISTRO, it's $19.99 per year to release an unlimited number of songs, and you'll get 7% off by using that link, studiolivetoday.com/distro. But what a distributor does is you upload your song or your EP or your album. I'll be doing this in a couple of days' time with my new EP. And then they process that. You add the album artwork, you add all the details, and then they send that off to all of the different stores. So you don't have to manage it. You don't even have to know where it's going. You just go tick, 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 and then it sends it off everywhere. So that is the best way that you can get your music out there. And it's so cool, because we live in the future. It just makes it so super accessible that if you told me 20 years ago, as someone in my 20s, like wanting to release music, that I would be able to have the ability. Well, first of all, you'd have to explain to me what online streaming was, and MP3 files had only just been invented. So you'd have to explain online streaming, and then you'd have to explain to me that, like my favorite bands, I can have my songs and albums out there right next to them, so someone can listen to Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, and then they can go and listen to Pete Johns' music. That's a bit insane. So hopefully that helps you out there. Hello, Pin Dan says, people sleeping in the UK. What time zone are you in? I'm here in Australia. That's why I sound the way I do. I'm here in Adelaide, South Australia, where it is 8:54 a.m. Rick Lisk, hello, good to see you here, my friend. Always good to have you. Tiny tweaks, gotcha. Yeah, mastering is all about the tiny tweaks. That was back when we were talking before about mastering. Yeah, tiny tweaks is the way to go. As soon as you're having to do major things in mastering, it probably means you need to go back to your final mix and do the tweaks there, and not try to do everything in the mastering process. We will scroll on down. We'll see if we've got any other questions. We're light on the questions here today, so we will see if there's a question. All right, we've got one here from Tim Osborne. This is a good question. So, is it important to register with PRS or PPL so they can collect any broadcasting fees? This is a great question. I did a video all about copyright. If you search my name, Pete Johns, and copyright, you'll be able to jump over and check out that video. And in that video, I talked not only about copyright, but also about distributors. So what we talked about before, about whether you need to actually register your songs as copyright, and also PRSs, which are organizations and groups. So there's BMI in the US, BMI and not ASCAP, maybe it's ASCAP. I can't remember the name of the one in the UK. Here it's APRA AMCOS here in Australia. And what you can do with them is you register your songs, and then if your songs are actually played in public, on radio, a broadcast, or at the shopping centres, whatever, then you will actually get paid. You'll get royalties for those, broadcast royalties, which are different to streaming royalties or music purchasing royalties. So here's the way it breaks down. If you want people to stream and buy your songs, so someone goes to Spotify and they add you to a playlist and they start playing your tracks, that's a streaming royalty. You collect that through your distributor, through DistroKid. If you put it on iTunes through DistroKid, someone buys it, you collect those royalties through DistroKid. If your songs are being played on the radio, played at the local ice skating rink, the local bowling alley, someone's covering your song in like an artist night, all of those sort of things, that's where you get the royalties through a PRS, a Performing Rights Society? Performing Rights? Yeah, something like that. Should know that. So that's how that works. Now, you might be saying, how on earth do they know when my song's being played? Well, they don't. It's a bit of an inexact science because clearly they can't determine exactly where everything's being played, but they basically use some averages and some testing and some surveying to work out around about when your songs are going to be likely to be played, and then you pay your registration fee, and then the way it works here in Australia is that a public venue have to pay a license to APRA AMCOS, so they pay for a license fee to be able to play pre-recorded music, and in return, that money goes into a big pool, and all the members of that, all the musicians, get a little piece of that back as payment for their song being broadcast. I'm definitely not the person that knows the most about this because I don't actually do a lot of that. My songs are not really going to be broadcast anywhere, so I don't spend a lot of time on that. But maybe it's a topic that we should talk about in a future video as well. Good note here from Jade. If you're playing live each year, you submit a kit of all your gigs and the songs you play, and you'll receive payment for playing live. So that is a good thing. And again, one of the reasons I don't do a lot of this stuff is that I haven't been playing live. Although I wonder, yeah, it wouldn't count. I'm like, I wonder if playing live counts playing here. Maybe I need to go out and just sit in the park and play so I can say I'm playing live and then I can be streaming. Anyway, I'm getting way off track there. Righty dokie. So thank you for your question, and thanks everyone for being here today. Jade's already linked to those that we've been talking about, the how to release with DistroKid, the video there, and also how to get the 7% off by using the VIP link. Quick question here from Eyes Israel says, I want an audio interface with 4 inputs and 2 headphone jacks. Which one should I get? Focusrite, Scarlett, or Steinberg? Really comes down to your budget and the features you're looking for. I love the Scarlett, I love the Steinberg UR series. So the UR44C is a pretty solid unit. 2 headphone jacks, MIDI in and out, 4 inputs, 4 full combo jack inputs, XLR and 1/4 inch. And yeah, it's got CC mode, so you can actually switch it to make sure that it's class compliant when you're using it with your iPad or your iPhone. Similar to something like the 8i6 from Focusrite. It's much of a muchness, to be honest. If you buy, people say, oh, like, there's this weird thing. It's like the Mac PC thing or the Android iOS thing. People get so passionate about the difference. And I use Steinberg, and I love Steinberg because I just like them. If someone came at me and said, oh, I can't believe you use Steinberg, I'm Focusrite all the way, I'd be like, awesome, more power to you. They make great stuff too. And that can be seen by the fact that I use Sennheiser headphones, a Zoom mixer, a Steinberg audio interface, an Audio-Technica microphone. I basically have no 2 things that are made by the same brand because I think different companies make different things, and what works for me will be totally different to what works for you. So I don't think you can go far wrong selecting either of those devices. Oh, my iPad's just popped up over there. That's always interesting. Let's jump on in and grab some more questions from through the week. And then if there's any more final questions from those here live, please throw them here in the chat. This one is around downloading GarageBand from Paul. And Paul says, hi, I tried that, but it won't let me download and states I need iOS 13 or later. My iPad says the software is up to date, 12.4.7. Any advice? I have music in my GarageBand and I can't get to it. Super frustrating. So here's the dealio. If you're using a device that is not compatible with iOS 13, so an iPhone 6 or earlier, an iPad Air 1 or earlier, an iPad Mini 3 or earlier, then you are a bit out of luck when it comes to the new version of GarageBand. But here's the good news. What you can actually do is go into your profile. So in the App Store, don't search GarageBand in the App Store. And in fact, delete anything because you'll have a version in there that's going to sit there trying to update forever. It will never work. Delete GarageBand completely and then go into your profile. So in the App Store, you're going to tap on your little picture of you or whatever your avatar is, go into your recent downloads or your download history, and find GarageBand in there. If you hit the download button in there, it's going to pop up and say, would you like to download the last compatible version with this iPhone or iPad? Tap on that and you will be golden. Instead of getting 2.3.8, you'll get 2.3.7. So the things you won't get are USB file support, dark mode support, and a couple of other little things. But you'll get most of the things we have in GarageBand. Exactly the same thing works for iMovie and pretty much any other app. Even apps that are no longer in the App Store, sometimes you can actually find them that way by going in through your previous downloads. The other way to do it is to hook up to your PC or Mac and re-add them in that way. That's a good way to go. And if you have never downloaded them before, what you can do is actually log in to someone else's device. So just get them to log out of their Apple ID, log into their newer iPhone or iPad running iOS 13, or if you've got another device, do it there. Download the app there. It puts it in your recent download list, and then you can go back to your older device and it will pop up and you'll be good to go. So hopefully that helps anyone that has an older device and doesn't have the ability to download the apps that they're looking for. That should help you do exactly that. A few more questions here. One from Zora. Can you please recommend something to me? I like making lo-fi music. This is the first time I'm going to try plugins. What are the best plugins for lo-fi music? So yet another question where Pete's going to be lazy because I don't do a whole lot in the way of lo-fi sounds. I know a lot of people who do, and I know many folks who watch videos here on Studio Live today do. So if you have some suggestions here for lo-fi plugins, what plugins do you use that are best for lo-fi music? Drop those down in the description. There's a lot of different things you can use. Things like flanges are good, and the micro phaser as the default plugins in GarageBand are good. Chorus sounds can be good for that. Degrader type sounds, so sounds that actually make it. Bit crusher sounds are often used in lo-fi. So what I would do is start by just experimenting with all of the different GarageBand plugins, because you've got 10 different plugins in there that you can play with: your reverbs, your delays, your flanges, your choruses, your bit crushers, and then sort of branch out and start exploring some of the free plugins. What I will suggest though is if you're looking to not pay anything for your plugins, I've actually got a complete list. If you go to studiolivetoday.com/free-AU, you can go to my list of free AUV3 plugins that you can download and use with your iPhone or iPad. I do recommend exploring some of the paid plugins as well and supporting the great work done by developers, but when you're starting out, it can be a great way to go. And you can see this question was asked on one of my free plugin videos. So if you've got any other suggestions, please throw those in the chat or in the comments here if you're watching the replay of the video. Next question from Jim Byram. Says, hi Pete, thanks for the video. Do you know if it's possible to connect two MIDI keyboards to GarageBand using the double keyboard function? I'm hoping to get two Korg micro key Airs, but wasn't sure if I could use both at the same time in the app. Thanks. As far as I know, it sounds like every question I'm answering with nope, 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 nope. But as far as I know, you can't. So as far as I know, you're unable to actually do that, to actually have two different MIDI keyboards or two different MIDI devices. From my experience, at least with an iPhone and iPad, as soon as you plug one MIDI device in, if you try to plug a second device in, it will simply override the first. Once again, if others have other experiences that vary to this, please let me know. But I don't think so. I can picture what you're trying to do there. You want to get the cool like double keyboard thing going on, which could be kind of cool, especially if you could use like two different sounds. But yeah, I think you're going to be SOL sort of out of luck there, Jim. But again, if anyone has any other ideas, then please let me know. Alrighty, next question here is from Lonely Grunde. So a question about WAV and MP3 files. It says, what if my audio appears as a video? How can I change it to the same form as yours? So converting from video to audio, how do you do that? So there's a number of different ways you can approach this, and it depends on, there's so many different file types. There is an app called File Converter that does a lot of file conversions, funnily enough, on your iPhone and iPad. That's definitely worth a look. It's the little green one. If you're looking for the logo, search File Converter in the App Store and find the little green one. So that's an option. Audio share is a great way to convert. So I convert a lot of my video that I record here. So this video, for instance, after this one, the way I make my podcast is I download the video. I think I've mentioned this before. I download the video from YouTube. I then send it across to my phone into audio share, and then I convert it to an M4A audio file right there within audio share. And then I can release it as my podcast version. So that's a couple of ways to go around it. But yeah, you'll need some way to get it from video to audio. GarageBand itself doesn't accept video. It can't just strip out the audio from video. You'll need to convert your video to audio first, and then you'll be good to go. Excuse me. Excuse me, I need a quick coffee break, even though the coffee is going to be cold. Should have brought water. Alrighty. I think we've got one more question here from through the week, and then we'll check in with the folks live before we finish up the show here. Question here from Laz Sunset. Says, very informative as always. I wonder if a small Behringer or Pyle mini mixer or USB audio interface would work with iPad. Thank you, Pete. So, short answer here is yes. I'm going to go on another quick rant that many of you have heard before, but it's about class compliance. So, any USB device is pretty much going to work with your iPhone or iPad as long as it is class compliant, which means it can run without having any drivers installed. So it's the old plug and play thing. If you can plug in your USB device to your Mac or PC, it will show up and work without you having to download and install any specific drivers, then chances are very high that it will work when you plug it in. So I don't know about the Pyle mixers, but the little Behringer, the little mini Behringer mixers that you get, the Q series, Q302, Q502, all the little USB mixers, they do work with your iPhone or iPad. Now, of course, I don't have it handy, but you will need your genuine Apple Lightning to USB 3 adapter. Why the USB 3 adapter? Well, your mixers are going to use a bit more power generally than a smaller audio interface, and you want to make sure you can plug in additional power if they pop up that awfully dreaded message, this device uses too much power. So keep that in mind. The other thing that's handy, as I mentioned in this video and talk about all the time, is a powered USB hub. Honestly, if you're getting into recording in iPhone and iPad, before you even buy an interface or a microphone or a MIDI keyboard, I would go out and buy a genuine Apple Lightning to USB 3 adapter and a powered USB hub. I use the 10 DAC powered USB hub. It's got 4 USB 3 ports and a power only port at the front, so 5 ports total. If you have both of those pieces of gear, you are going to have ultimate flexibility. It means that anything you throw at your Lightning based iPhone or iPad is going to work. The problem is that a lot of folks go out there and they'll buy their microphone or their interface, and then they'll only think about the adapter afterwards. They'll end up buying a cheap $10 adapter on eBay. It won't work. And then they'll be in my DMs and in my emails asking me why it's not working. And I'll say, genuine Lightning to USB 3 adapter from Apple, powered USB hub, you won't go wrong. No, very few people have actually contacted me and it's been any other issue apart from class compliance. That's number one, making sure it doesn't need drivers, using a genuine adapter, and using a powered USB hub if it needs more power. If you do those 3 things, you are almost guaranteed success and victory in what you're doing. Jade Star's done some good research for us here around the lo-fi that says there's a link to some best lo-fi AUV3 plugins and some top 5 lo-fi plugins as well for using. So there you go. That's obviously they are out there. Got a few questions here, a few questions, clarifications, and other things that we have here. So Joshua Good says, can you still not select 2 tracks at once? Because I would like to play the keyboard and do vocals at the same time. Yeah. So sorry, when I was talking about MIDI keyboard, I was talking about two separate MIDI keyboards. What you can do, and I do all the time, is connect up a MIDI keyboard via USB. And this is where the powered hub comes in handy. I connect up my MIDI keyboard via USB into one powered hub port. I then plug in my interface. So what I can record guitar, MIDI keyboard, and microphone all at the same time, or 2 channels of microphone, 2 different mics, and my MIDI keyboard at the same time. You just can't have more than one audio or MIDI device. So because MIDI is not audio, it's just data, you can connect up your MIDI, arm a track to record keyboard. You can then arm another track to record your microphone and another track to record your guitar, and you could technically record 3 tracks at once. It would be kind of tricky to play guitar and keyboard at the same time, unless you're someone like Dan Baker who has like a one-man band set up. I'm sure he's done something like that before. But yes, good clarifying question there, my friend. Now, Tim Osborne here. Tim Osborne says regarding online mastering. So Tim has just released a track, by the way. Go over to his YouTube channel and check out his new song. It's very cool. I've tried eMastered, Lander, Cloudbance, and BandLab. They're all pretty good, but BandLab is free, and I thought they did a good job for £0, euros, dollars. eMaster was the most. Yeah, so it's something I didn't mention and totally meant to in the mastering section is if you don't want to master yourself, you can use one of the online cloud-based mastering solutions, which can work okay. It can do good things for you. Your mileage will vary. Just try it. Especially most of them give you a free trial. They don't give you the full resolution WAV file to release, but they might give you an MP3 version just so that you can check out what their mastering will do. I think we've got one more question here, and then we'll have to finish up here. I know it's come to that. Question from Johnny Van says, I love all your formats and ideas. My channel is growing and over 3,600. The ideas for formats are a mile a minute. How do you choose what ideas to pursue on your channel? Yeah, excuse me. This is an interesting one. So, and it's related because these days, yes, pretty much everyone that is creating music is generally integrating some sort of video, whether that video is just creating lyric videos for your songs, whether it's tutorials about how you do things, whether it's behind the scenes kind of videos about your creation. A lot of folks are creating videos, even those that are focused more on music. What do I do? So I approach it this way. So I do a video a day. As you probably noticed, I've got two key things that I do here on the channel. Number one is I have my mantra, which is helping you create, record, and release your best music. So every video that I do has to have that. Now you might be saying, Pete, but you do videos where you're just playing music. But the thing with that is when I do those videos, and I'm doing one today, a happy hour show, what I'm doing is I'm trying different things. I'm using different gear. I'm plugging in my gear. I'm learning myself. And that is actually going to help me help you, because then I'll do follow-up videos about how to do live streaming and how to actually set up your YouTube channel for a live performance. So that's the reason I do that stuff. So that's number one. And then number two is I make sure that I do a video every day. So they're the two things that are the kind of the staples of this channel: create, record, release, and one video per day on average. Some days there'll be none, some there'll be two, but every day there is a video that is that's going to be produced. So at the end of the year, there'll be 365 videos. How do I get the ideas? What do I do for those videos? Well, over time it evolves. And this is the thing. I've had shows like this that I've been doing for like 30 weeks in a row, and we're going to continue doing these. So there's this sort of set format. The other things are, I must admit, majority driven by the comments and questions and suggestions I get from users like you. So that is what is actually driving it. It's what I try to do is the reason I spend so much time in the comments, an almost comical amount of time in comments, responding and replying to YouTube comments, is that usually that goes onto my idea list. So if I start getting comments or questions about a particular thing, that goes into my list of things to do. So today, talking about mastering was because I got a lot of folks in the last week asking me about mastering music. What is it? How do you do it? So I thought I would do that video, or do this video that has that bit about mastering. You probably know this, but I will slice out that little section, those 7 or 8 minutes at the start, and reuse that mastering related content on other platforms for other things. So really, to me, it is about, because my channel is so focused on you, it's about what you are looking for and the ways that I can help you create, record, and release your best music. So by listening to you and the things you're asking me, I can then create them. And it's good feedback when I hear people say, oh my goodness, I was just thinking about this thing and then suddenly a video of yours popped up about it. I said, yeah, that ain't a coincidence. That's because you and probably 10 other people were all asking about that because they couldn't find it anywhere. So I created. I hope that helps you anyway, and I hope that helps others that are, again, wanting to do similar things to what I'm doing here. It is, like I say, we live in the future. It is 100% accessible, and there are no barriers to entry now to do this stuff. I started with an iPhone 4S and nothing else. No microphone, no audio, and I would just shoot video on that, and I'd shoot my other, I think I had a 4S and a 5S. So I would shoot my 5S with my 4S using all the onboard microphone and video. I would then throw that into like a free video editor that I had on my PC. I'd edit it, I'd upload it, and I'd move on. Things have changed and evolved from there, but you got to start somewhere. Everyone starts at zero, start doing your thing, and then move on from there. That is going to do it for this episode of Home Studio Q&A. I hope you got some value out of it. If you did, and you're watching here on YouTube or Facebook, hit the like button. That just tells me that I should keep showing up and doing more of these shows each week. You can, of course, head over to studiolivetoday.com to catch up on all of the information that we have here on the channel, as well as all the other live shows and videos that are available there to help you create, record, and release your best music. Thanks for being here, folks, and I'll see you next time.